So as I think about the nuclear agreement, and I think about what the implications of it are, there's a single word that comes to mind, and it's aggression. The one thing that has been absolutely consistent since the signing of the nuclear deal is the increasing aggression on the part of the Iranian regime. I'll make 3 points in this regard. This aggression is sort of unbridled, whether it's internal, external, or it is to suit and further their ambitions to be the hegemon of the region. And you touched on this. I'm going to give you a little bit more in terms of the facts. Look, internally, you've heard about the increase in executions and amputations. There are increased acid attacks against women. There's the jailing of artists, juveniles, and including businessmen, foreign businessmen who have come into Iran in an attempt in the wake of the deal to do business. And so the deal itself has been what I regard as something of a cloak to allow the Iranian regime to exhibit this increasing aggression. The external, we know. Some of it is quite obvious and alarmingly quite bold about it since the signing of the agreement. Yes, we know that there are Iranian militias in Syria, Iraq, and Yemen. We know it because while this sort of aggression has historically been handled by Hezbollah and in an asymmetric way, in those countries, we've seen General Soleimani, the head of the IRGC's Quds force, the most brutal arm of the Iranian regime, a known terrorist responsible for the murder of Americans in Lebanon, leading forces, Iranian forces in uniform in these foreign countries. They have been less obvious but equally aggressive in places like Afghanistan, Lebanon, and threatening to deploy, General Soleimani directly threatened to deploy forces into Bahrain. And so the external aggression of this Iranian regime is unprecedented historically, and it's overt. And the notion that continues to rise in the wake of the agreement and go completely unchallenged by the Americans is troubling to me, and I think is troubling to especially our Arab allies. The regime, it sort of, in my estimation, as their aggression continues to rise outside of Iranian borders, going unchallenged suggests to the regime quite clearly that they can continue, that there is going to be no check on their power. This is, now going to the third point, the rising hegemon ambitions of Iran in the region. I worry deeply about the deteriorating political situation and relationship between the Iranian regime and the Saudis. Much like we had in the Cold War, there is always the risk of miscalculation, except even during the Cold War, at the height of the Cold War, there were channels in which we could decelerate a misunderstanding. That's not the case. Time and again, we saw the burning of the Saudi embassy. There was the unfortunate stampede at the Hajj last year. And I am deeply concerned that with the 3 ISIS attacks last weekend in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, including against Medina, that the Iranian regime will seek to take advantage of the chaos inside the kingdom. It would be very dangerous. You know, when you think about the increasing sectarian conflict that the Iranian regime has fostered and encouraged, the notion of taking advantage of attacks against the second holiest site in Islam is deeply, deeply troubling. Iran's language, not only against the United States, as has been pointed out, has continued to be, again, very aggressive, but the missile tests, which have been mentioned, on those missiles, which Iran claims they have deployed defensively, I think that's hard to even countenance, had written on those missiles, "Death to Israel." And so Under the cloak of this agreement, Iran has become more vocal, more physically aggressive, and I will say, you know, when I think of the horrible human rights abuses inside Iran that have been chronicled by such groups as Human Rights Watch, our own president, who talked early in his first term about Americans living their values, and did away with programs like the enhanced interrogation program in the United States because it was his view that these programs were not consistent with American values. And frankly, I applaud his outspokenness on the issue, has not chosen to apply those same standards to the Iranians in terms of their human rights record. It's unfortunate, and I do think that there's an opportunity, as the United States faces a presidential election, for us to rethink our policy in terms of Iran and the region to be more consistent with our own values. Thanks, Lincoln.
Thank you very much.